Hi, it's public Bible reading questions time again, and today's question is from Mike, who asks, what are some of the practical ways to help people read the Bible better in small groups or Bible studies? This is a great question because often I'm training people on how to do public Bible reading in a church context or in a context where they've got time to prepare over several days. But what do you do in those contexts in which you read the Bible with a moment's notice? Maybe it's you're reading the Bible to your kids, or you're asked to read the Bible at an event but you haven't got any time to prepare, or in Bible studies when people are sitting around and it's time to read the passage that you're going to study. Well, it's a great question, so I'm going to share a few little tips. One of the things I do when I'm given a passage at the last minute is I use whatever time I've got. The more familiar you are with the passage, the better it will be. And so I'll quickly read through the passage and read it as best I can, knowing that I won't have time to get all the nuance and understand the whole context of the passage. You can always read clearly, even if you're not fully understanding what it's saying. You might stumble over a word here and there because it's the first time you're reading it out loud. But one of the big key things to remember is that the context or the genre of text that you're reading will very much shape the tone of the way you're reading it. So if you're reading a story from the Gospels, then it'll often have a more intimate, personal, narrative story-like tone. If you're reading a great big prophecy from Isaiah or Revelation, it'll have that grander feel. If you're reading a word of philosophy or wisdom from Ecclesiastes or Proverbs, it'll have a tone that's appropriate for that. And if you're, maybe you're reading something that's got instruction like in Leviticus, or you're reading something that's more poetic, like in Genesis chapter 1 or the Psalms or something like that. So in those things are things you can learn as soon as you know what the passage is. And if you keep those in mind, they will really help you in the reading of your passage. Now, I wanted to test this for myself and give you a little example. This is not prepared. I have no idea what passage I'm going to read, but I'm just going to do what I never encourage people to do, which is flip open the Bible and just read something randomly. But we're just going to try and get a random passage. Here we go. There we go. That's fine. I don't know. Put my finger down. Okay, so we've got Acts. I'm going to read from Acts chapter 5, verse 17 onwards. I'm just going to read a paragraph. Now, what do I know about Acts? Well, I know it's narrative. I know it's New Testament. I know it's on the back of the Gospels. And so it's going to have a different tone to another part of the Bible. It's going to have a story-like tone, a narrative tone, a historical tone. And so I can bring that, even though I have no idea what I'm about to read, I can bring that to my reading and read with that sort of tone. So I'll just do it now. This is completely cold. So Acts 5 verse 17. And I'm reading from the ESV translation, which is a particularly not an easy one to read out loud, but it's often used for Bible studies or in more in-depth study. So here we go. 17. Now, one thing you notice I'm doing already is I'm not just launching straight into it. I'm taking a breath, calming my nerves. I'm having a look at the passage as best as I can. And often cold reading doesn't involve you just looking at the first word and reading it, but you're actually sort of scanning the whole sentence and getting a sense of what's coming up and reading along. And actors do this with cold readings of plays when they first sit down and read together as a cast. And so over time, you get used to doing it and you get better and better at cold reading. But your Bible study groups won't have that. So let me just read and we'll talk about it. Okay. But the high priest rose up, and all who were with him, that is, the party of the Sadducees, and filled with jealousy, they arrested the apostles and put them in the public prison. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the prison doors and brought them out and said, "Go and stand in the temple and speak to the people all the words of this life." And when they heard this, they entered the temple at daybreak and began to teach. Great passage. Now, did you notice, as soon as I heard there was an angel speaking, that informed me, without any preparation, of that it's got to be a bit grander, it's going to have that authority of an angel. And because it's a story, it had that sort of sense of things unraveling, and you can read with that tone. So there's just a little example of a cold reading. Now, what do you do in a Bible study? How do you encourage Bible studies when you're sitting down and reading the Bible, to elevate the Bible reading in that context? Well, I've got a few tips, a few things I do that help. Hopefully it'll help you. One thing I do is you prep the group for what they're about to read. Now, if you had that passage and you were about to go, okay, today we're studying this section of Acts, and Susan, can you please read from this verse? Go. And that's the first thing you do. Then she's got no chance. She's just going to be stumbling over. And a bad Bible reading, it's not that that's a problem for that person. It's more that a good Bible reading helps people get into the passage and start to understand it already. So you want to make it easier for Susan. One of the ways you do that is you tell them the context. You tell the group, okay, what we're going to hear today is apart from Acts, it's narrative. Maybe you've been studying Acts, so you might go, okay, well, last week we talked about this, remember? And then this had happened. Okay, well, let's see what happens next. And you prep people for the tone of the passage, for the mood, for what's happening. And so their ears are ready to hear the style of text. And if they're ready to hear it that way, the reader will be more likely to be ready to read it appropriately in that way. And so and then you go around and you read. Now, one of the methods of reading the Bible in Bible studies that I've seen over the years is one called popcorn, where you read one verse and then you go, "Popcorn Bill," and then he reads a verse, and "Popcorn as David," and and so it's like goes around the room in this sort of random sense. And the goal of that, I think, is to just get everyone reading and make it a bit of fun. I don't like that exercise, as maybe you could tell. But the main reason is because it breaks up the passage so much. It just turns it into this little one verse here recitation. And also everyone's on edge of who's going to read next. And this, so I think it's much better if you do two things. One thing is you just go around the room, right? So then everyone knows who's reading next. There's no long pause between the one reader than the next reader, which often can break up the flow of a reading. So you already know. And then the person who's coming next will already know in their mind that they're going to read. And so they'll be following along a bit more than even everyone else, and hopefully. and so the flow from one reader to the next can be much more smooth, which means that the whole passage can be much more smooth and everyone can hear it. And there's also the other big benefit of the other thing I do, the second thing I do, is that I don't ask people to just read a verse and then the next person read a verse. I don't even ask them to read a paragraph, even though that's a better method. I just ask them to read until the thought has come to some sort of conclusion and it moves on. Or maybe it's a different scene. Maybe if it's a big long argument from one of the epistles, maybe he's going through and he's finished an idea. Or maybe the same sort of thing in a prophecy. It's an idea's finished. And the benefit of doing that, and you just ask people, read, just keep reading. And when you get to the end of an idea or a thought, then the next person will continue on. The benefit of that is that it gets people to listen to the text. It gets them to think about the text as something with movements, something where an idea is continuing on and then finishing, and then something new is starting. So they're listening to it in the mind. They're starting to get into the mind of the writer of that text, rather than just thinking about a slab of words that they have to speak out. And that may mean that the whole reading is read by one person, and that's fine. Or if it's a long reading and it's broken up, it'll be broken up in more natural ways than just by the headings in the text, or the verses or things like that. And you'll never get someone just reading one verse, because no idea is ever captured just in one verse. So that's one of the methods I do. I prep people. I allow them to read until the idea is finished. I read in a circle. And then the last thing I do is I model it. So when it's my turn to read, I'll read with that intentionality. I'll read with respect to the genre of the type of book I'm reading. And that elevates it by going, oh, that's how it models how you should read. It doesn't have to be read with great drama and everything like that. It's just about reading with a bit more care than just reciting word after word. And hopefully, as you do that, other people see that that's something you can do and should do, and they'll follow suit. The last point I want to say is have grace. When people are reading things for the first time, they'll stumble over words. They'll read it, but they'll say it completely wrong. Sometimes it's worth addressing, going, actually, no, it doesn't say that. And other times it's fine, just let it go. And it's the first time you're reading through it. Hopefully, as you study the passage, you'll read through it a couple more times and you'll go back over verses. But for that initial reading, have grace. Allow people to stumble as you would if you were preparing a passage and you would read it. And you would be preparing for it. And so the first time you read it, it's never going to be the best reading. But yeah, there are ways in which you can really help people engage with the text, get excited about what they're going to read with ears to hear, and a heart that's engaged with the text, even if they're reading it for the first time. So hopefully that's helpful. Thanks.